The Next Round, a marketing inspiration podcast.
Hello, and welcome to The Next Round, the AAR podcast about the transformation in marketing of some of the UK's most famous brands. I'm your host, Robin Charney, and I've been working in digital and marketing for over 20 years and now help other marketers with their business challenges as the lead consultant for the ecosystem design practice here at AAR. Each episode is a fast-paced conversation with a super smart marketing leader sharing the story of their heritage brand, its history, transformation, and most importantly, its next round. Why heritage brands? Because their evolution is more interesting, richer, and more complex. And frankly, we've all got something to learn from them. I'm so excited to be chatting with some amazing marketers this series, such as Michelle Roberts from BMW and Craig Inglis, formerly of John Lewis, just to name a few. Today, I'm chatting to someone who I think probably has one of the most fun jobs in marketing. Please welcome Benazir Barlet-Batada, Marketing Director for Cadbury, Green and Blacks, and Maynard's Bassett's. Hey, Benazir, welcome to the next round.
Hello, Robin. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And I definitely agree. I have one of the most fun jobs in marketing.
You really do. I'm so jealous. Let me tell you guys a bit about Benazir. With 17 years marketing experience and part of the Mondelez UK leadership team, Benazir is marketing director for confectionery, responsible for some of the country's best known and I would say loved brands. Under her leadership, Cadbury has become the nation's favorite, biggest and fastest growing chocolate in the UK. Some achievement. She was the UK lead for a hugely successful brand reset and repositioning of Cadbury in 2017, moving from joy to generosity, resulting in a multi-award winning communications campaign and double-digit brand growth. She has been responsible for some of the brand's biggest innovations, started the charity partnership with Age UK, and driven in-store activations with Cadbury FC. She is also sponsor for Mondelez's Race Relations Network Employee Affinity Group. My goodness, there's so much there I want to dig into, Benazir. But first, I just want to give the listeners a little bit of a history of Cadbury because I just found it so fascinating. So, founded in 1824 by John Cadbury, a Quaker, he was inspired to sell drinking chocolate as an alternative to the pervasiveness of alcohol. And that meant lots of gin back in the time, even to children. In 1878, the company founded Bournville, a countryside estate for workers, unheard of at the time. And the Quaker beliefs of the founding fathers also led to an enlightened approach to employee health and well-being. And at the time, the estate included such unheard things of as education, health, and sports facilities for all workers. So pretty amazing kind of founding principles. And I guess what I wanted to dig into with you, Benazir, is how does working on such a brand with such a rich history does it shape the type of marketing you do?
Absolutely. I mean, in recent years, Cadbury has rediscovered its principles by re-engaging with its past. And Cadbury's history, as you just mentioned, is a great one from the outset. John Cadbury wanted to create a company in 1824 to give back to the community around him. It's a clear generosity of spirit in this company that was there right from day one. And we've taken those inner truths of the company and the principles of this company and put them into our brand. And this, we've not only done that in marketing and communications, but we've done it in marketing and communications in the recent years, but we've also done it with more focus, more clarity and more enthusiasm now. But we've also done it culturally in the business. So everyone in the organization now feels a little bit more pride and belonging. And it means that, this history, as you put it, is really embedded in our culture, both as an internal culture, but also what we show externally to the world. But there's so many examples of our fantastic, his fantastic generosity of spirit. It's just crazy.
Have you got a favorite?
The fact that it was created as drinking chocolate as an alternative to gin. I mean, that's the founding principle. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think just during the war as well, they stopped, they gave their fresh milk to the government to help with rations. And they put skimmed milk powder into Cadbury Dairy Milk chocolate. It's fresh milk again today. I think we've taken these principles in our new advertising. So you've seen our advertising from 2017 onwards with the little girl that goes into a corner shop. That was our first TV advert when she buys a bar of chocolate for her mother with little knickknacks, not with money, with little knickknacks. And then, it's really, she wants to buy a bar of chocolate for her mum because it's her birthday. And then the shopkeeper gives her back one of her favourite knickknacks. So as to show his generosity as well. So, during COVID, we've been donating media space to local businesses to get the advertising rather than using it for ourselves. This generous spirit of the founders absolutely lives on. So you said to me, this great history, does it shape the type of marketing you do? Obviously, our principles, our founding principles absolutely live on in the marketing we do. He had this very progressive value there at the time, and we like to continue that spirit. But of course, with a legacy, it always feels like you're making the difficult second album.
Yes.
And it always feels like that. So we've always got this pressure to live up to great marketing and also consumer expectations.
Do you think that history is an unfair advantage against your competitors? Do you think it gives you an edge in the market that others might not have?
I'm biased, but
Clearly.
I'm so inspired by Cadbury's history. I'm so inspired. Is it unfair? Is it a fair advantage? I'll come back to that.
You're allowed to have an unfair advantage, by the way.
I think so. Also, when you look at our history, whether that is, from leading the way in workers' rights or all the great work that we've done with cocoa farms in Ghana and Ivory Coast, we're also a brand with a great advertising history that make people smile, feel good, and sometimes even singing along. You remember the adverts. I don't know if you do remember the adverts, Robert. Oh, you've been here for a long time.
I've been here a while. I remember. Yeah. I definitely remember.
So, I remember growing up as a kid, adverts like Finger of Fudge, Just Enough, and Everyone's a Fruit and Nut Case, Milk Tray Man, the Flake Girl, Gorilla, or even the old advertising posters. So, yeah, it's brilliant. You can't help but be inspired. So, is it an unfair advantage or is it a fair advantage, I suppose is my question, because it's been won over decades and decades of great marketing.
It's a treasure trove. It's a treasure trove, and there's a lot of hard work that's gone into that. Absolutely.
But we feel the burden, It's a motivating burden, I suppose, is the way to say it, because we want to keep that legacy. We've got a standard to uphold and carry on for the brand for another decade, for someone else to carry the torch. Absolutely. It's not, we're just custodians of the brand.
Absolutely.
It's been around for 200 years. We want it to be around for 200 more. We really do.
Absolutely. No, I feel that weight of history when I'm talking to you. And I guess it's interesting in the FMCG category, if you think about that as a vertical, it's going through so much transformation, isn't it? Like regulation, routes to market, change in the way communications is done and where you need to be as a brand. But with all that, Cadbury's is still the fastest growing FMCG brand in the UK at the moment. So I guess I'd love to hear from you. What's the biggest change you're seeing in the sector? And what challenges does this bring for you at Cadbury?
Speaking generally, first of all, challenge for marketers is the same. It's always the same one that Darwin identified 150 years ago. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives, but it is the one the most adaptable to change. And marketers are really good at change. And, we've got to make sure we have the right organisational culture, workplace culture, and we need to be able to test, evolve and learn. And marketers are really good at that. And I suppose, how is our sector changing? And it's evolving rapidly. High fat, salt, sugar legislation is coming. Growing focus on well-being and sustainability, consumers holding big brands to account, evolving shopping habits like the rise of e-commerce, and continuing shifts in media consumption. So as a marketer, you've got to keep on being on the lookout for opportunities in these trends, as well as making bold moves when required so as to push your brand into new spaces.
Is there one out of all those challenges that keeps you up most at night?
High-fat, salt, sugar legislation that's coming, absolutely.
How so?
There's just so much coming where it's going to massively change the industry. It's coming soon, absolutely soon. So, we're getting ready for it, but it's going to be a transitional period.
There's so much regulation in that space that, as a marketeer, it's kind of like a constant carousel, isn't it? There's always something coming, and not to mention a little, a pandemic that came out of nowhere as well. So I really enjoyed your point about adaptability being the key skill that a marketer has to have. And I think that's a really good insight, because it's just true. It's the capability we all need most as marketeers, because you just don't know what's coming around the corner at any point in time. So I think that's a really interesting point. You've been with Mondelez via Kraft since 2004, I think. So have you seen the role of marketing within Mondelez change and evolve in that time? I always think FMCG marketers are so well-rounded and they're close to the product and the commercials. I always kind of admire the FMCG sector, because I think it's such a great training ground and foundation for great marketing, because you're always connected to the business. Do you think that makes for a better marketer, that kind of connection to commercials as well, and that kind of well-roundedness at FMCG? They're brand marketeers, but they're also commercial marketeers.
Sure. Yes. It's mainly what I've known as well, but I see the benefit. I suppose I joined, as you said, 2004. I joined as a marketing assistant on Dairylea Lunchables. And at the time, Jamie Oliver was in the press calling Dairylea Lunchables I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I will. He was calling them donkey bollocks. So I cut my teeth on a brand like that.
Wow. You've got scars, Benazir. You've got scars.
I have scars. But brilliant, fantastic training ground, stomping ground. And I worked there, did various roles I worked my way up to brand manager and innovation manager, because in marketing and Mondelez, innovation is a skill within the marketing function. So you learn that as well. And you get very close to the commercials. And then it was in 2010 that I went to Cadbury. And I was actually, I'll tell you something. I moved to an innovation role in Cadbury, first of all, in 2010, when Kraft took over Cadbury. And Margaret Jobling, who you interviewed, who you had the podcast.
One of my girl crushes, yes.
Exactly. She's amazing. She interviewed me and hired me. And I spilled a glass of water on her in the interview. I kid you not. I made my mark. I'm like,
it obviously worked. Top tip, listeners. Spill something on the interviewer in your interview and you're bound to get the job.
I got the job. I was so happy. Oh, dear. But yeah, I launched loads of innovation that year. I really learned loads about innovation working on chocolate. And I think you've really spoken about some of the innovations I've launched. And then over time, I worked up my way into equity roles, marketing manager roles. I'm today marketing director. So I've seen loads of change. And you mentioned about the commercials. I think I've seen this change in marketing where I think there was a time when marketing was very much like communications, and actually today it's not like that. That is a part of our role and I love it, and don't get me wrong, absolutely one of my favorite parts of the role. I've got a spike in that area, really like something that I love, but 100% we're very much linked to the commercials. And whether you're doing a base business role, whether you're doing an innovation role, we have this. We don't know just our brand metrics. We know our financial metrics. We know how to build a P&L. I don't know any all marketers in Mondelez know how to write their own P&Ls. They know impacts of any different costs, impacts of a capex, impacts of an increase in promo funding. We've got hurdle rates that we need to meet for revenue, for profit. We can write that, and I think it does make you better, because I think we know our brand metrics. We know our sales metrics. We're very close to the sales teams as well, and sales revenue planning, and our financial team, and we know our financial metrics. And I think if you don't know all those things, then you don't know how to grow your brand. And I think you're only doing half the job of marketing. And so I think it's absolutely vital that we continue with that. And it does make, FMCG marketing is a great stomping ground for that. And I think it makes it a very fun job because of it.
It's a great training ground in a really kind of fast-paced environment where there's so much learning opportunity. I'm always kind of jealous of having not started my career in that space, because I think it's such a well-rounded training ground. So I've always kind of admired it from afar. Let's talk a little bit about creativity, which is, kind of, I guess, one of the other major ingredients in our marketing world. You moved the brand to a whole new creative territory, which, for a brand with 200 years of history is a big deal, right? It's a big, scary change a lot of the time. So can you talk to us a little bit about that, why you did it, and more importantly, I guess also how you brought people along with you? Because I know those kinds of changes are always challenging. You have to get a lot of people on the bus, don't you?
Yeah. The key thing is to create a vision and then consistently communicate that vision with purpose and passion and energy and conviction. And then importantly, to enable other people to contribute. So we found to bring themselves to that vision, people can then act on it in their own roles and feel like contributors on the journey and feel part of it, and they own it too. So we all know change by definition isn't easy. No, we know that. We need to celebrate the wins en route, small, big, create that sense of momentum. It's a useful parallel. It's another historical moment. In Bourneville, when it was first open, the family said to its workers, you know what, please give us ideas, give us innovation ideas, give us better efficiency ideas for the factory, make it work better. If we decide to do your idea, you will get a sizable return. And it was revolutionary at its time, really visionary. It's so straightforward today, but it's absolutely the same thing. It's like setting a vision, getting people a part of it, make them the change makers, the active contributors. And actually that's what strengthens and accelerates change even better. So that's what we had to do.
Makes perfect sense. And did your agencies help you in that kind of setting of the vision and selling it in?
Absolutely. VCCP were key. And we've always had really good partnerships with our agencies, like working with different ones across the world. Our agency relationships are super, super, super important. We really need to invest in there. And of course, they helped us. obviously when we were going to the pitch, we defined our problem, but then they came to us with your problem's right, and this is how we're going to solve it, and this is how you're going to help us with the vision. And they came in with our sessions to sell this in. We're absolutely partners. You can't hold your agencies at a distance. If you want them to make great work and do more work than just making beautiful adverts, they can do much more than that. You've got to bring them involved, and they absolutely were there every step of the way.
Talk to me a bit about what makes a great partnership, I guess, and how you kind of help your marketeers be better at that. Because it's a skill. It's a skill. Again, that's one of the ones they don't teach you at school, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really clear for me that, from experience, that success with an agency requires the traits of a good relationship, a good friendship, I'd say, as far as that, like trust, openness, honesty, vulnerability. Having shared goals and a mutual understanding of the strategy is absolutely, of how we're going to get there, is key. And also this willingness to challenge each other and to be okay with it, and embrace the difficult conversations. You need that healthy willingness to push each other on, and also to acknowledge each other's contributions when it all comes good, because it does always come good. I mean, David Ogilvy famously said that clients get work that they deserve.
Yes.
So it's vital. We ask our marketers to invest in that relationship, to invest in knowing their brands, their consumers, make sure they do great briefings. You've got to be involved all the way and just keep on discussing, keep on debating, keep on embracing, keep on it. And healthy tension's fine as long as there's always that mutual respect and everything's in service of great brand building. So it's a really fun part of the role. And I think it's hugely important, that relationship.
It is. And it's looking at the business as a whole, it's really only marketing who have that huge reliance on kind of external partners a lot of the time, isn't it? And that skill set, the product team might not have it, or the finance team might not have it as much. So I always think it's a really interesting how marketeers acquire those skills. And clearly it's foundational to the type of marketing you do. Are there other skills or capabilities that you think are kind of coming to the fore for marketeers, that there's a shift and a change, or do you see the same skills always being kind of foundational and important?
Obviously, there's loads of foundational skills. Some of the key skills I'm looking for today that have changed. So empathy, vulnerability, the ability, but more so the authenticity to lead, be yourself, the courage to fail fast, ask for help, so that's linked to vulnerability. And I like to look for people with high DQ. So I learned about this recently, and I love it because it goes without saying high IQ, high EQ. But there's something called DQ, and I recently heard about it, and it's called the decency quotient. And it's all about valuing kindness and appreciation. I think marketers at Cadbury have this in bucket loads, and it's very much linked to what Cadbury forefathers were all about. And I think that's super, super important. And I think that's what we're looking for in marketing in Mondelez, or Cadbury in particular. Now, obviously, and also from the past, I mean, we recognise the importance of diversity and inclusion, recruiting, retaining people, super important, always has been. John Cadbury, he established the company with progressive ideals right from day one. It's our responsibility to continue them, and it's the right thing to do, as well.
That's amazing. And I'm kind of processing the DQ thing because I haven't heard that before, but I think it's a really interesting kind of metric, isn't it now, or something? Like, I'm just trying to think how you hire for it. Like, how do you know when you're hiring someone that they've got high DQ? How do you demonstrate it?
I think it's about
asking spill water on people
questions.
And apologize a lot. Is that it?
Oh God. You'll never forget that, will you?
Never forget that one. Speaking of that kind of new ways to measure marketeers, or new things that marketeers have to think about, you mentioned sustainability. Is that something that you've kind of come across recently?
Yeah, it's being looked at, especially with our agencies. Like, how do we minimize waste? How do we look at this further? I mean, the huge focus is really much on the packaging, the product, whether that's sustainability of how we produce cocoa, what we do with our Cocoa Life initiative with the farmers out in the Ghana in Ivory Coast, making sure the sustainability principles are really embedded there. I mean, I could do a whole podcast on that. Also, packaging is what we're sure. The packaging, loads and loads of work is happening on Cadbury. Well, headspace reduction, reduction of CO2 emissions, water reduction in our factory, and then also loads going on in that manufacturing and area.
Yeah, it's amazing. This just wasn't part of the kind of marketing vocabulary. January 5 years ago or 10 years ago, was it? It's just the marketing, I always kind of sit back and kind of revel at how much the job of marketing has changed so much in the last decade, of the things we have to worry about and think about. Do you feel the same?
Absolutely. It's crazy, isn't it? You're just like, you get your head around something and it all changes again, or shoots up into the air and you've got to rechange it. I do think sustainability is so super important. I mean, don't need to even say to you why. I mean, it's really obvious. And it's just like, it's becoming a hygiene factor. Yes. I remember when I joined, health, convenience, they were the hygiene factors. Today it's sustainability, well-being, obviously in our area, HFSS, which is probably linked to well-being really. But they're hugely becoming hygiene factors of how we need to sort out this business.
Back to your point about marketeers having to be the most adaptable employees in any organization. You have to be able to see what's on the mind of your customers and adapt and serve them in the best way, right?
Absolutely. Because if we don't, Cadbury's so big, they will tell us. They are vocal and they will tell us. And too right, too right. They should.
No, absolutely. In the last year, I guess, the way you've done marketing and the way you've kind of, managed your teams, I'm sure has changed quite dramatically as well. Do you have any personal lessons or some learnings of what, you personally in the last 18 months have kind of changed in the way you do your marketing or manage your teams?
Oh, this pandemic in the last 18 months. Wow. 2020, generosity was obviously really important in different places, from supporting NHS to supporting each other. And as business, people went back to trusted brands that they've always loved. So Cadbury had a strong year, actually. It's its trusted, loved brand, because treating, comfort eating as well. We all did it, let's be honest. We all did it during the pandemic. And because chocolate gives you a moment of comfort, but we had our challenges, like supply chain issues. Demand became huge. It meant that we had to make changes, had to rationalise our portfolio, had to change things around, and we became a stronger cross-functional team because of it. And I think that's been brilliant. And the impact as a big business and a big brand for Cadbury it's been very positive. Cadbury did very well, but we're really conscious that for smaller companies who could no longer trade because the doors were shut, that left a big dent, a big hole. So we did help. We decided to help. And so when small businesses had to shut their doors, we opened ours, enabled them to sell their products on our e-commerce platform. So we also changed our advertising to hero their brands and their products. This became our For the Love of Chocolate campaign, where we directly promoted smaller businesses in the same space as us to help them get through this difficult time. So in that context, I guess we learned that sometimes it pays to be generous as a business too.
Nice. That's a lovely story. I guess just to finish off, let's talk about the future. What's the next round for Cadbury? You've done your brand reset. You've navigated a pandemic, a couple of small little accomplishments in the last few years, Benazir. So I guess I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. What's next? What's the next round?
It's not just me. It's been massive teams, massive organisation involved. I cannot take the credit. Key challenge, I mentioned it, is adapting to upcoming HFSS regulations. We're preparing for it, but we know it's going to be a big period of transition for us. And like you say, marketers, we've got to adapt. We're the quickest to learn and flex and adapt to the context where we'll have hopefully an advantage. But hopefully it'll be the end of COVID. I really hope so. But yeah, that's the thing. That's our key challenge that we're working really hard on as a business now.
That's a small little matter for you to deal with. It's massive. Yeah. It's massive. If only the listeners could see your face right now. I feel the weight. I'm just looking at you. I feel the weight of that one. That's a biggie. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I mean, I love your enthusiasm and your exuberance for the brand. You're such a great ambassador for Cadbury's and Mondelez, and I've learned a lot talking to you. It's been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for making the time to tell us a bit about the next round for Cadbury's and how you've kind of helped this brand kind of do its reset. It's been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin. Been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Next Round. I hope you found it as interesting as I did and can take some insights back to your own marketing. In the next episode, I chat to Craig Inglis, former customer director at John Lewis & Partners. If you could rate and share this podcast, it would really help others to find these great stories. I'd also love to carry on the conversation and hear what you think. We'll be sharing and chatting about it on LinkedIn and Twitter. The Next Round is brought to you by AAR, the experts in marketing ecosystems. At AAR, we are a multidisciplined team of consultants who have strong and well-informed views on what brands need to do to overcome today's marketing challenges in order to better connect their businesses to their customers and drive growth. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.